What's going on, everybody? This is JVB with the Post Game Report podcast. So, I want to talk about experiences because lately I see a lot of people talking about things within the video game industry that we basically should not be talking about. And I'm talking about, financials, tech specs, programming, stupid shit. But people are not talking about the experience. The experiences they have with video games is going to stick with them way longer than any of these freaking nonsensical things that people just seem to flood the social networks and YouTube and video game websites. It's just a bunch of nonsense. There is no place for it. Where there is a place is for people to share experiences, and that's why the video game community was formed, right? Because it was people sharing their experience with a particular game, with a particular console. See, in 1979, when I first started playing Asteroids, and I was at the age of 7 and I had no idea what I was doing, I experienced something that was life changing. That was my introduction to video games. And since the age of 7, I've been playing video games. It started out as a hobby and then became a passion and then a job. And at the age of 48, I am still playing video games. I still feel strongly about them. I still talk about them. And I still get new experiences out of new software. The experience I got with The Last of Us 2, Ghost of Tsushima, those experiences are going to last. Even a game like Death Stranding, my experience is unlike any other, right? Not any other, anyone else, because people experience things differently. But the thing about an experience is that it molds you. It teaches you something. It teaches you what to like, what not to like, and how to look for things that I. It is a lesson. And for me, at the age of 7, for me to remember vividly the music for Asteroids, if you want to consider that music, the sound effects, which was, a bunch of beeps and a very thumpy, bassy, sound indicating, the asteroids rocks coming at you. I still remember that. I still remember the location, which was at a bodega that had people playing dominoes and cards. And this was in the Bronx, okay, Monroe Avenue. I remember this vividly because the experience was life-changing, as I stated earlier. And it's so memorable that it still lives in my head. But do I want to go back and play Asteroids again? Sometimes I do. But it is not the same experience, right? Because it looks, compared to what's out today, it doesn't look or play as good as some of the video games that are out now. But that's okay. I'm not trying to relive that experience because then what happens is that I spoil it for me. Like, it's also like watching a movie that you hold near and dear to your heart. For example, The Exorcist. When I watched The Exorcist as a kid, it scared the fucking crap out of me. When I watched it again with my son, who is currently 18, he didn't find it too scary. And quite frankly, I was like, it's not as scary as it used to be. And so a situation like that can mess up an experience for you, but it will never take away the fact that when I watched it as a kid, it scared the living daylights out of me for years. I still remember playing games like Saxon for the first time, Q*bert, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, Track and Field, going to the arcades at 42nd Street and experiencing the music. I can still smell the cigarette smoke. I can still, for a split second, relive those moments, but I know I can never relive them because they just aren't there any longer. So it lives in my head, and because of that, It is glorified. It is memorable. It is special. And we cannot ignore the experience that we get. And a lot of people nowadays on social media, on video game websites, on YouTube, we are spoiling that by talking about things that do not lead up to a good experience, or any experience for that matter. All we are doing is ignoring the fact that we got into video games because of the experience that it gave us. How else will you know what kind of gamer you are, what genre of games you like? How will you talk to someone who has finished a particular game and you didn't? You didn't even play it. Or maybe you did for a little bit and you didn't like it. So you can give that feedback to that individual or to your listeners or to your viewers. Talking about tech specs, hardware, financials, talking about executives, that doesn't matter. Where's the experience in that? All that is doing is trying to make you seem smarter than you are. I mean, or if you're friendly with certain publishers and getting free gifts, all that is just a popularity contest that at the end of the day really isn't going to matter, because those physical items or those little exchanges really don't last long because they come and go. Material things come and go. Relationships with people whose main job is to build relationships to push their product, those aren't real relationships. And on occasion, I will admit, sometimes, a friendship or two can come out of these things. But why did you get into video games in the first place? It wasn't to meet executives. It wasn't to gain free gifts or notoriety. It was to gain or to live. And let me correct myself. It was to live through an experience that these video games will give you. And I think it's time that we concentrate on that and we talk about that. Because those are the things, or those are the reasons why I got into podcasting, was to share my experience. And I want to continue to do that. And sometimes I get sidetracked with talking a little crap about consoles and people, but at the end of the day, I love sharing my experience with video games, with the video game culture, with my past playing video games, growing up playing video games. I love talking about that because I know there are people who have similar stories as the ones that I lived through. But their stories are different. And I love listening to that too. And that is why I got into all this. And at 15 years or whatever, I'm still podcasting, still talking about video games. I don't give a shit about tech specs, frames per second, ray tracing. None of that matters. Folks, let's go. Let's start talking about what got us here. We all have one thing in common. No matter where we're from, what nationality, if we like each other or not, there is one thing that we have in common, and that is our love for video games. So why not talk about it, right? Why not share our stories together? So anyway, I'm JVB. I'll talk to you later.